In the yoga system, you practice these things in order to connect your inner wisdom. You also practice on self-compassion. Can you be compassionate to yourself? And usually when we're not compassionate to others, it's because of something in our own lives that we haven't learned to forgive ourselves for, right? If you can't forgive yourself for something, chances are you're not going to forgive somebody else for it.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Create Magic at Work. I'm so excited for this guest that I have for all the magic listeners today. It is Vish Chatterji, and I know Vish personally. We actually are both alumni from the Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute, and that's where I met him, and we have become connected ever since. I think it was a couple of years ago at the first conference, we ran into each other talking about astrology and how we use it in the business world, which was such an interesting conversation. But a little bit more about Vish. After a successful career as an engineer, executive, and entrepreneur, Vish is honoring his soul purpose as an East meets West executive coach. Ooh, I love that. That is so Dana Zohar, quantum leader, all of those things we talk about on the show all the time. He coaches and advises corporate and business leaders through a unique blend of Western management thinking and Eastern wisdom traditions. He helps people find balanced success through the wisdom of yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, and Vish, you're going to have to help me pronounce this word, karmic advising. How do you say Yodish?
Jyotish.
Jyotish. Ooh, I can't wait to hear about that. Okay, we need to get into this. Vish holds a BS in mechanical engineering from Northwestern University, an MBA from the University of Michigan, and an executive coaching certificate, as I mentioned, from UC Berkeley. Vish has studied in traditional Himalayan ashrams and at the Chopra Center in California and teaches globally. Vish held public office as a board director for the Beach Cities Health District in Los Angeles and is the author. This book is amazing, by the way. If you don't have a copy, you need to get it. He's the author of The Business Casual Yogi, Take Charge of Your Body, Mind, and Career. He's a married father of 3 and loves to garden, bicycle, and fix things around the house. I need you in my house, Vish. Welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Amy, thank you for having me on the show. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you. And, you know, I was thinking about when we first met and, you know, an executive coaching setting, and we're in our business casual clothes and interacting in sort of this dry business environment. And there's some sort of connection, and there's something you had and something I had. And somebody once called me a shaman disguised in business clothes. And I feel like I met another shaman disguised in business clothes, meeting you. And of course, once we got into the astrology conversation, it was clear who we truly are underneath it all.
Yeah, you just gave me the chills already. 3 minutes in. Yeah, thank you, Vish. You're an edge walker, really, corporate shaman. Yeah, just to your point, Dr. Judy Neal has done a couple of decades of work studying edge walkers. And when we were talking before, you know, I even pressed record. I was like, oh my gosh, how you incorporate, and we'll get into it, you know, yoga. And what was the other thing I just read? The karmic release, the Jyotish.
Jyotish, yeah, Jyotish, it's a Sanskrit word. Jyotir means light, and Isha means divinity. So it's a light of divinity. So it's, you know, in a loose translation, you could say it's Vedic astrology. But as soon as I use the word astrology, it sounds a bit woo-woo, right? Astrology sort of has a bad rap. So Jyotish is an actual word, and Jyotish really is science of light. And how is consciousness showing up in somebody's life? So that's really what it is. It's an understanding of what is your karmic pattern, what's your karmic journey, and how those karmas showing up. Oftentimes in the workplace, we spend 10 hours a day at work, if not more, And all of the things that we're struggling with in terms of karmic patterns, they show up around us. They show up in our boss, our coworker, our client, a difficult meeting. And, many times people say, oh, I got so triggered at work. Well, that trigger is usually a clue to some kind of karmic thing. And what's amazing about the system of Jyotish, it helps us understand what's the rationale behind that trigger, what's really going on there. And then there's powerful tools to then manage it, sometimes shamanic tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. We've actually talked about facing your shadow at work with some of Carl Jung's work on the show. And this is an interesting perspective, thinking of it in a karmic way. So one thing I like to really highlight with the listeners is not everything is going to be puppy dogs and rainbows all the time. If you're working on spiritual intelligence, or if you're skill building in this area. In fact, sometimes you may be given opportunities to practice these skills that you're incorporating into your leadership and your life. And looking at it from a karmic perspective is very interesting to me because, and I'd love to hear your maybe a client story, obviously confidential, change the name, whatever, where something was showing up at work that was bothersome or triggering, like you said, but really that's a sign, right? That's a sign like, ooh, this is something I need to work through so it doesn't happen again. Patterns arise because they're meant to be broken.
Yeah. So, karma is a huge word, right? We could probably have a whole conversation just on karma. In a basic sense, the word kar as the root word of karma, is to do. It's action. So at the end of the day, a very simple way to understand karma is what actions do you take? When something happens to you, how do you react? What do you do? And, I was very struck when you first talked to me about spiritual intelligence and the idea of sort of rising above and having resilience around a challenge. So when a challenge happens, if the challenge takes you out and you get completely off base, then, that was a poor karmic response. So when you do spiritual practices and you keep a very disciplined, regular spiritual practice, when difficulty arises, you rise above it. You rise beyond it. You have a resilience, a transcendence, so to speak. And so you take less negative actions, thus improving your karma. So every time we have a challenge, it's a karmic challenge is what really is going on. And in a way, the universe is testing to see how do you react to that particular challenge, right? So the thing about Jyotish is it helps us understand how these karmas are working because the system believes that the planets in space are actually the agents of karma. So yes, at a physical level, you look up in the stars at night and you see this kind of reddish planet and you're like, okay, that's Mars, right? I can see this reddish thing and it's Mars. And astronomers will say, yeah, there's Mars there. And we see it as a rock in space. It is just a big rock and gas floating around in space. Just like we are a bundle of bones and joints and muscles. Is that all we are? There's something more. There's an animated layer beyond that, right? There's a energetic layer. There's a mental, subtle, emotional layer. There's a deep spiritual consciousness layer. We're not just a bunch of muscles, bones, and joints. So in the same way, a planet like Mars is also not just a collection of gas and rock. It has a subtle energetic influence as well that influences us at the energetic level, not really known, right? You don't really know. And so people will say, well, I don't think Mars really affects me, right? Because they don't see it. But people do know that the sun affects them. Sun rises, you feel bright and happy and the sun has risen. Mm. The sun sets, you get tired, you get sleepy. There's a circadian rhythm driven by that planet. The moon, right? Full moon nights. Mm. The ER nurse will tell you. It's a crazy night in the ER. I work with police officers a lot. They're like, oh, the amazing, crazy amount of crime happens on full moon. So we're definitely affected by the moon. But these other planets also affect us, but it's more subtle. So what a Vedic astrologer can do is say, okay, here is this planet, Mars. Yeah, it looks red in space. It also creates a lot of anger. And so I can look at some of these charts and say, you know what? You have a tendency towards anger. And I can see that very clearly. And I can see the times of life where that really shows up. And then you mentioned the shadow side, right? So every planet has a bright side and a shadow side. We know that, right? The moon has the bright side and the dark side. What does that show up in a person's life? So the sun, planet of light, planet that helps plants grow, planet that you bask in the sunlight, you feel so happy, so cheered up. But it also burns you. It burns your skin. It causes heat waves. It causes, desertification, right? Like dries things out. So it has a shadow side too. So every planet has a bright side and a shadow side. And as an individual, we can do nothing about it and let the shadow side just sort of bash us around, or we can take action. We can say, okay, I recognize that I've got a little bit of this shadow planet in me. And so let me move myself towards the bright side. Yeah. So a planet like Jupiter is the teacher, right? Teacher and wisdom. Isn't that a good thing? Teacher and wisdom. I want to learn, right? But then there's some teachers who are like, you have to do it my way and no other way. It is my way or the highway, right? That becomes the shadow side of a teacher, the shadow side of Jupiter.
Interesting. So I've mentioned this a lot this season, but I play around a lot on Instagram. I use it as a creative outlet to design and post my messages that hopefully help others with all of this. But what I see, and it's just my algorithm, there is a lot of astrological accounts and posts and all sorts of things around this. And I know both of us use part of it in our coaching practice to help clients, the moon is full. Why don't you, do some work on releasing something this week? As an example, forgiveness, things like that. What do you want to bring into your life on the new moon? Let's set some intentions. And as that new moon grows to full, let's watch those, short-term goals grow. What is your take? Because I'm finding that people are giving away their power to these energetic posts and information. So I'm wondering what your advice or take is on that, because I see, Mercury's in retrograde. So, it's not my fault, or no, Mars retrograded through January, so I need to just cocoon and not do any work, or you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, no. Like, to me, this is giving your power away. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because it is getting popular in the workplace. So
that's such a good insight, Amy. That's such a great insight. I love that. So the first thing is the Jyotish system, the Vedic astrology system, relies on a completely different set of math. And this is where the first breakdown happens. And usually when I meet a client to look at their Vedic astrology chart, there's a bit of an identity crisis. So for whatever reason, when the Western astrology system developed, it was in line with the Vedic astrology system. They both made. So Vedic astrology probably started 8,000, 10,000 years ago, and about 2,000 years ago, the Western astrology system was developed by the Greeks and Persians, and everything lined up. But somehow the Western astrology system picked a moving point in space to base their calculations off of. So over the years, their calculations have drifted, and pretty significantly, by about 23 degrees of space. So when somebody says, oh, you're a blah, 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 if you actually looked up in the sky, you wouldn't see that planet in that location. So there's 23 degrees off in calculation. The Vedic system relies on a very fixed point in space that never changes. So 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 5,000 years from now, it never changes. So it's correct to astronomy. So a Vedic astrologer and a NASA astronomer would agree that this planet is in this location of space. Mm-hmm. A Western astrologer has drifted. So that's the first sort of muck up. So when somebody says, oh my gosh, the sun is in Cancer or whatever, and it actually isn't there, they're first of all making an incorrect assessment. Then when they say, well, that's influencing my life, they've absolved responsibility for their own life. Okay?
Correct.
So the second thing is, everybody has a very unique birth chart. Mm-hmm. In Vedic astrology, we cast a chart for the exact moment of your birth at the exact point on planet Earth that you're born. So two people born at the same time, different parts of Earth, will have different charts. Two people born on the same spot on Earth, but 2 hours apart, will have different charts. And by having a different chart, it means that you have different influences of your karma. So Mercury retrograde doesn't affect everybody the same way. Mercury retrograde, if it is indeed retrograde, and if it is indeed in the spot of the planet, spot on space that you say it is, it doesn't affect everybody the same way. It depends if they have that sensitivity in their chart. Some clients I have, Mercury retrograde comes and goes, nothing changes for them. So if they're sitting there going, well, I can't do this because Mercury retrograde, that's incorrect. For other people, it's a sensitive point. Every time it goes retrograde, they have their computer fail. So I tell them back to drive. So I think, this is, in the Western world, we reduce everything to pop culture, right? Yoga is this very sophisticated, elegant system, and we've turned it into twisting in a pretzel shape on a mat. That's it, right? We've got this massive system of astrology, but we've reduced it into this pop culture, here's the trend for the day. And so I think we have to be very careful of just reading something and not really knowing what we're doing, what we're talking about. Like when you get into these types of systems, you have to have the right guidance. You have to have the right knowledge, the right insight. And for goodness sake, have the right calculation.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just had something hit me when you were saying that, and about the pop culture and the taking on what you read for whatever it is for the day. It's so important to build the muscle of being able to tap into your own inner wisdom and your own place within you that comes from wisdom, love, compassion. In SQ, we call it your higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And often when the discernment comes in is if you're giving responsibility away to some other thing or person to make decisions for your own life. And while these tools that you and I both use are very helpful in tapping into that space, I think we need to make sure, I feel like it's my duty because I've seen it, that there's a balance there. Does this feel right for me? Can I rise? Now, also, higher power, tapping into your higher power as well, whatever you believe in. Can I rise above these planetary energies or harness them in a way that keeps me in that higher self space?
That's right. I think, we believe that we have this body level, which is our, like I said, muscles, joints, bones, bloodstream, all of that. Then we have this emotional body, and then we have a deeper, higher self, right? Consciousness, your soul, your divinity, your higher self. And at the end of the day, the higher self actually knows everything that needs to be done. It's very, very intelligent, very sophisticated, very all-knowing. And our work as spiritual practitioners is to connect to that higher self. Our work as coaches is to facilitate our clients to connect to that higher self and make decisions from that place. We never want to take the balls out of the hand of the player. The player owns the ball, holds the ball, runs with the ball. So same thing in life. The coachee has all the wisdom and intelligence within them, and our job is to facilitate that connection to intelligence. And I find that people who have regular disciplined spiritual practices, they develop this very powerful connection to their higher self, and they make decisions from that place, and they know. And so when my data point is when I look at the astrology chart of a person who's deeply spiritual, they already know all of the things. They already understand. Like there's no surprise. Sometimes it's a validation. They're like, oh yeah, I've always known that, but thanks for validating it. So you don't really need the tools of astrology or tarot or any divination tool if you're already highly spiritually evolved, because you just know, right? Advanced yogis, I've actually read the charts of some very advanced yogis, and they already know and see and know exactly which way to go, and they've already made decisions that are in line with what I would advise them as a Vedic astrologer. So at the end of the day, when you let an Instagram post or a teacher usurp the power of your higher self, you've got a problem. At the end of the day, any teacher, any post, anything you read should be in service of your higher self. You should never subjugate your higher self to some other outside energy. And again, the planets are just clues to understand these things. They don't control us. We actually control our lives.
I love that. You just hit like 3 skills of spiritual intelligence that is wrapped into all of that, which is, awareness of ego versus higher self, practicing, seeking guidance from higher self, and then operating from that space, from that higher self space, a higher percentage of time. And it's a daily practice and a life journey all at the same time. Right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a daily thing. And I think that's the thing is, my yoga teacher, Yogi Vish Chatterji, who we collaborated on the book, he said, look, if you brush your teeth every day for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, that's the standard recommendation. But if you say, I'm so busy, I can't brush my teeth every day, I'm going to skip 5 days and brush for an hour on Saturdays. It's not going to fix the problem. It's a daily thing. You have to do it morning and evening. You have to daily cleanse. You can't just, skip a bunch of days and then try and do it all on the weekend. So it's the same thing with spiritual practice. When you do a regular spiritual practice, you're cleansing the clutter that builds up, that clouds the inner self from shining through. It's like this beautiful light that you carry inside of you. And with all the micro traumas and, stress of the day, it gets cluttered up. And so daily you want to cleanse and polish so you can see through that and your higher self shines through. If you say, you know what, I'm only going to do it on Saturdays, or I'm only going to do it once in a month when I go to a yoga class, then there's so much clutter that builds up, you can't break through that plaque. And so I always recommend people, you have to have some amount of time set aside every day for what is called sadhana. And sadhana basically means your daily connection to higher self. And it doesn't matter what you do. Some practice that you do that connects to higher self. Now, the yoga tradition prescribes a bunch of things that you can do that are specific to that connection, but depending on what your belief system is, as long as you're connecting to a higher self on a regular basis, it's like a daily brushing of the soul so that the inner self, higher self can really shine through.
Mm-hmm. When you were speaking, I was thinking it's like scrubbing your subconscious from debris, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Vish, why? I'm a senior executive leader listening to the Vish and Amy right now. Like, why are they talking about, I just need to hit my numbers. Like, I don't have time to do a spiritual practice or scrub my subconscious, or why is this going to benefit me to operate from my inner wisdom? Why are we even talking about this? I'm just being the voice of someone, the critic here.
My whole book is centered around that basic thesis, right? The business casual yogi is all about, how do I find more success and better leadership in the workplace as executive? And, my experience as an executive was I was put in all these trainings as a senior executive to develop myself better as a leader. And every time I went to, the high dollar, tens of thousands of dollars of executive training, it all had a parallel to what I knew of the spiritual self-development traditions. At the end of the day, it feels like everything in the leadership playbook, it seems to be derived from the spiritual development playbook. So that was an interesting observation, what is going on here? And then what I started to understand that the yoga system as itself is really designed as a personal self-development tool. That's what it is. How do you develop yourself? How do you become better at everything in life? And so if you apply that to a business leader, you become better at business. You become better as a leader. What is holding back leaders today? They're stressed out. They don't listen enough. Their employees are miserable. They can't retain people. People are quitting left, right, and center. There's no sense of purpose. There's no sense of mission. There's a complete burnout. They're stressed out. They have no time. And so I'm thinking, okay, how do we rectify that? Well, the yoga system is an anti-stress system. It's an anti-burnout system. It's a purpose-enhancing system. And it gives you the most bang for your buck. In the smallest amount of time, you get the most benefit. With a 20 to 30 minute morning practice, you get incredible benefits, right? That show. And what starts to happen is I find that when I take an executive and I train them in some basic yoga techniques and basic meditation techniques, their stress levels go down. They go from a 70-hour work week to all of a sudden a sub 40-hour work week, and their numbers go up. What's going on? And so as I start to, for my own data, try to analyze what's going on, they make better prioritization decisions. They lean into the projects that give the most return, and they lean out of the projects that don't serve them. I've had clients, like I had a guy who ran a chemicals company. We cut out 20% of his customers that were taking up 80% of his time. Right? So he was spending all this time, all this busyness on customers that actually weren't giving that much revenue. And by cutting them, like just having that sense, like cutting them away and having that trust, he ended up having the juiciest revenue-rich customers that took up less of his time. So all of a sudden his work hours went down. So I think it's also just being in a meeting and being able to read between the lines. What's really going on here, right? There's words coming at you in the meeting, but there's an energy behind that tells you a lot. So having that sort of, you could say, spidey sense or Jedi abilities to, see beyond a conversation, understand the energy, have a predictive ability of what's going to happen based on a decision. These sort of, superpowers, you could say, that's where it really helps. And of course, being a more inspiring person, because you yourself become inspired. When you connect your inner self, you live a more inspired existence, and people sort of rally behind you. So many of the ailments of the current executive are solved by spiritual intelligence practices, really.
Yeah. Thank you. That was such an insightful, beautiful way to share that. I just did a solo episode back a few weeks ago about why being a wise and compassionate leader decreases burnout by 64%. So Harvard Business Review came out with another partner. They did some research, and you have to be wise and compassionate, both. And then it decreases burnout by 64%. And as you just illustrated, within yourself. And then that ripples out 10 times over to your team and who you're in charge of.
And it begins with you. And that's, why? I mean, it's interesting because when you think of the Buddhist tradition, it's all about wisdom and compassion. Like that's the central tenet. When you think of the Dalai Lama, he's a wise, compassionate man. So it seems to be like a central tenet of many religious and spiritual traditions. Mm-hmm. And in the yoga system, you practice these things in order to connect your inner wisdom. You also practice on self-compassion. Can you be compassionate to yourself? And usually when we're not compassionate to others, it's because of something in our own lives that we haven't learned to forgive ourselves for, right? If you can't forgive yourself for something, chances are you're not going to forgive somebody else for it. So it starts with yourself. And so the work really begins with you.
Yeah.
It begins with you, right?
Yes.
So what have I not forgiven myself for? And if I can figure that out and forgive myself for it, I'm naturally going to forgive other people. I'm naturally going to be more compassionate.
So good, Vish. Yes, I literally was just going to say, you have to start being compassionate with yourself. And then you just gave this beautiful illustration again of how we can do that. I often see clients trying to be compassionate to their teams, and they're not being compassionate to themselves first. It happens a lot. I often see with all of this, like we were talking about in the beginning of our conversation, this influx of spirituality and astrology and tips and quotes all over social media, somebody misconstruing being wise and compassionate with being walked all over, not having any boundaries. So I just love how you said that for everyone. It really, really hit home. I would actually encourage everyone to rewind and listen to that again. So Vish, I want to hear from you what you believe a quantum leader is.
So the word quantum to me somehow, for whatever reason, connects to quantum leap, right? Mm-hmm. Quantum leap of faith. It's going beyond the normal constraints, beyond normalcy. Quantum physics is beyond normal physics, right? So for me, quantum leadership is beyond just, the old school leader was, take names, yell and scream. I came from the auto industry. That's how it worked. I yelled and screamed my fair share. I'm paying back for that karma. So yeah, you go around, forcing your will on others, right? And it was an IQ-driven environment. Who's the smartest person, right? Who's the smartest in the room? Who's the loudest in the room? And that's what drives the business. And over time, we've evolved and realized that, that doesn't work. We need to move to EQ. Emotional intelligence. Who is emotionally competent? Who understands emotions? Who can deal with emotions? Who can manage their emotions? That became the new thing. And then we went beyond that to SQ, right? And I learned that from you, Amy, this spiritual quotient where it's, can you see beyond? Can you tap into your higher self? Can you lead from that place? To me, quantum is the next step beyond that, but it's not a step. It's a quantum step, right? It's a exponential step where you, from my point of view, you understand and see the workplace as a karmic crucible. It's a crucible of karmas. All these people to come together for some reason, and you're thrown into these crazy, challenging situations for some reason. Mm-hmm. And can you not only manage and lead from an SQ, EQ point of view, but can you understand how your entire spiritual development is happening in that forum, in that meeting, in that project, in that discussion, and everybody else's development too? And can you extract the nutritive experience, the nutritive benefit of that experience, right? So without saying, oh my God, why is so-and-so not doing the job? And I said to do this, instead saying, okay, I'm in a challenge now. What is the nutritive benefit here? What is my lesson here? That's, to me, quantum leadership. That every single challenge, every single situation, every end of a job, beginning of a job is a lesson in your self-development and personal growth.
So good. So good. It's not just it's not just for the money why you're thrown into these systems and lessons and projects, right? It's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, in my personal life, I'm trying to see, there's a lot of talk about gratitude practice, right? I'm grateful for all these good things. But can we have gratitude for the bad things? Can we have gratitude for the things that didn't go the way we wanted them to? Because there's always a lesson there. So my big practice now has been something bad happens, something difficult happens that I normally get so irritated or upset about or devastated about. I try to say, can I find gratitude in this? Mm-hmm. Can I find gratitude in the adversity? Thank
Definitely.
You for this challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you for the challenge.
Thank you for the practice. Thank you for that's a spiritual intelligence. If we feel that we're having a challenge, we just say, okay, thank you for the practice. I'll try again tomorrow. And sometimes you don't learn the lesson right away or see the sun behind the cloud right away, but there'll be a moment years later where you're like, oh, that's why that happened. Oh my gosh.
That's right.
And it redirected me on the path I was supposed to be on. And then all these things fall into place. And so just hope and faith over worry and fear. Yeah. Right. I'm going to pull a journal prompt card for you and the listeners from my journal prompt card deck. Okay. It's going to be a message for us today from the universe. This card is just peeking out. I'm just going to grab it. It just keeps. This is so. We got patience.
Of course, I got patience.
Yeah. Right.
Big time working on.
Yeah, we got patience, and if I recall correctly, patience. Where are you? I need to be. Yeah. So patience. I just wanted to let you know, Vish, because I think you're a little bit familiar. Patience is based off the Seven of Pentacles. It's inspired by that. The affirmation on the card is, I trust the timing of my life and know that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. So for everyone listening, take a breath and just hear this. I trust the timing of my life and know that I am exactly where I am supposed to be right now. Vish, you get a question on the fly, and maybe your answer will be helpful for everyone listening. What seeds have you already planted that will lead to your future success?
So, because I'm a Vedic astrologer, the idea of patience is the planet Mars. Mars is a go, 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 get it done. Let's engineer the future kind of a planet. And I have that very prominently in my chart. So I'm a go, go, go. I'm very impatient. I want things to happen. And when there's delays, I'm beside myself, right? And even though with all these years of meditation and spiritual practices, patience is still maybe one of my number one challenges. So it's interesting that you pulled that card. And for me lately, I'm actually working on a project at home. I'm having my altar rebuilt. So there's a lot of shamanic rituals I do with altars and Vedic deities and fire and all this. And so, the idea is if you invest in your altar, you spend time at that altar and you put some energy into it, you make it nice, it's going to give you major rewards in your development. And it was supposed to be a 3-day project, and a project that if I did myself would be done in a day and a half. I work fast. We are now at day 14. So what is the universe telling me when we're on day 14? And every single time the contractor doesn't show up or something goes wrong, I've just stopped and said, this is a lesson in patience. So the seeds that I'm putting in place is really learning to be patient, because it's all happening in its divine time. And even this year, 2023 for me has been a year where I have been less apt to engineer my future and more apt to just accept and enjoy and let it come and let it happen. So it's been really a daily thing of just like, okay, here I am. This moment, this is all that matters. Something delays. Thank you for that delay. There must be a reason for it. So that has been my own personal insight into patience.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you today. And I'm grateful that you agreed to be a guest on Create Magic at Work and share your wisdom and insights with everyone. So thank you. How can people connect with you if they want to learn more, if they want to get your book, all the things?
Yeah, so my book is The Business Casual Yogi, and it's available anywhere books are sold. So online retailers and brick and mortar retailers sell it. It's easily available. And my name is Vish, V-I-S-H, and last name Chatterji, C-H-A-T-T-E-R-J-I. You can Google the name and there'll be links to the book. And my coaching practice is called Head and Heart Insights. So headandheartinsights.com. And there you can see the types of work I do with executive coaching, personal development, karmic advising, Vedic astrology, yoga teaching, meditation teaching, and Ayurveda, mind-body medicine. So Amy, it was a delight to be on your show. Thank you for having me. And I loved our soul-connected conversation. I felt like we're in the same room. And that's what happens, right? When you're tapped into your higher self, we're all together, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And we'll put all those links in the show notes. So if anyone's listening on their favorite app, they can just click right there to go to your book or to your website. So thank you so much for being a guest on Create Magic at Work, Vish, and for sending some magic to everyone today.
Thank you, Amy. Keep up the magic. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Amy Lynn Durham here. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found at createmagicatwork.net, or you can just look in the show notes in the episode and they're right there for you. Come back each week and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Keep joining us for more exciting episodes where we help you transform workplace culture to leaders that create less drama and stress and have high productivity and profitability. You have the power to create a burnout-free workplace right now. You can gain access to my new course, Create a Burnout-Free Team and Workplace, where you'll receive step-by-step tutorials in creating a team and organization that thrives. Click the link in the show notes to join us. I hope we brought a little magic to your day. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.